Let me ask you a question. If I was to ask you right now, how many subscriptions are you currently paying for without you opening your phone and checking your banking app? Is that something you would be able to do? In the UK alone, over £688 million is spent on unused subscriptions by consumers. And to just make it a little bit personal and make it relatable to you as an individual, approximately £61 is how much an individual wastes on unused subscriptions in a year in the UK. This doesn't happen because they're bad with money. It doesn't happen because they are reckless with money. I think this happens because digital spending is designed to be invisible, so out of sight and out of mind. The reality is these days, money doesn't just leave our wallet. It just quietly slips out of our accounts while we're busy getting on with our day-to-day lives. And the reality is that that happens without us even realizing is the difference between us being okay financially and us sometimes struggling financially. Not Another Money Podcast. Why is it called Not Another Money Podcast, you may be wondering? It's because this is not your typical money show. Get ready for real money conversations and lessons, expert insights from some of our very special guests, and hear some really inspiring stories from everyday people. On this podcast, you're going to learn how to earn more, how to spend less, how to grow the difference, and most importantly, live your best financial life. Welcome back to another episode of Not Another Money Podcast. I'm your host, Tolu, and on today's episode, we're going to be talking all about digitally decluttering our finances in order for us to get good with money and achieve our financial goals in 2026 and beyond. One thing I can tell you is that this episode is not about deprivation, it is not about cutting out joy, and it is definitely not about never ever spending money online again, because that would not be realistic. What I do want to do in this conversation though is to help you look at different ways where money can be leaving your account on a monthly basis without you really realizing. I really want us to be intentional about making decisions about these transactions and these subscriptions, and be intentional about unsubscribing from any of these subscriptions that no longer serve their purpose in your life. So in this episode, we will really be exploring and digging deeper into the silent drain on your finances that we do not speak about often enough. We're going to talk all about digital hoarding and all of the dangers that it comes with. And then I'm going to outline some steps that you can take to digitally declutter your subscriptions. And there are also some subscriptions that are hidden that you may not even realize that you're still paying for. And I'm going to be outlining where you could find them and how you can ultimately cancel them. So let's first explore this silent drain on our finances that we do not speak about often enough. I think one of the biggest myths about money is that overspending is something that is grand and big and elaborate. So people overspend hundreds of pounds a month on clothes and shoes and shopping, but actually a lot of times it is those small little expenses that add up over time because they're repeatedly chipping away at your finances without you giving them a second thought. Overspending doesn't have to be a big elaborate shopping spree, it doesn't have to be huge impulse buys, and it doesn't have to be out of control spending. For a lot of people, overspending actually looks pretty boring. I like to liken it to death by a thousand cuts. £4.99 here, £9.99 there, $14.99 there. I think digital convenience has made spending a lot more easier because we feel a lot less pain and friction. You sign up to a subscription once and then it's literally out of sight, out of mind. And I think that's the big problem because when spending doesn't require a decision, it doesn't really feel like spending at all. And that lack of friction has got me too many times. I'll give you an example of a time where I signed up to an SEO company. So SEO, for those of you that don't know, is search engine optimization. And it's a way of basically getting articles or your website to rank higher in search. So I basically signed up to this SEO organization to help me to come up with titles and themes for my blog in order to make my blog posts and articles rank better in search. And so I signed up with this free trial with the idea and the plan to cancel it after a couple of weeks when the trial had lapsed. And I had every intention of cancelling this free trial because there was no way I wanted to pay the amount that they were asking for the subscription. Anyway, fast forward a couple of weeks, I was using the service, the free trial, in order to do my research and do the work that I needed for my blog posts to perform better. And I basically just forgot all about the subscription. So yes, I used it a lot in the first week of the free trial, but by the second week, I wasn't using it and I wasn't even thinking about it. And I didn't think about it again until I checked my bank statement and saw that £600 had been withdrawn from my account. Yes, £600 was taken for this subscription that I had no intention of paying for. When I tell you I sat down and cried real tears, I'm not even exaggerating. I was sitting there crying, worries me, like, what have I done? What kind of an L is this? I was so angry and so frustrated at myself for not cancelling that subscription. I've had some L's in my time with subscriptions, but this was by far the biggest one that I'd had to take, and it hurt. I can't even lie. It stung bad because who wants to spend £600 on something that they don't plan to use moving forward? So anyway, I was able to thankfully get that money back, thank the Lord, because I was able to email them and they refunded me the money, even though they said it's against their terms and conditions. It's not something that they ordinarily do, but as a gesture of goodwill, they'll send me my money back. I didn't even question it. I was just thankful that they sent me my money back. And I didn't end up taking that L for that subscription I failed to cancel. But that's just an example to say that don't worry if you're one of those people who has subscriptions that they don't cancel, that they're not using. You're not alone. You're not the only one that makes those mistakes. I made a very costly mistake doing something very similar. I'd like to say it was many, many years ago, but it wasn't actually that long ago. It was definitely within the last 3 to 4 years that this incident happened. And oh my days, it was painful. If you don't take anything else from this conversation, please just take away the fact that you don't want an L as bad as mine, and you want to make sure that you're not paying for subscriptions that you are not using. So moving on now to digital hoarding. I know so many of us listening may know somebody that is a hoarder. You yourself may even be a hoarder. If you are, let me know in the comment section below or in the comment section on the podcast streaming platform that you are listening to. But hoarding is something that so many people do. I think there's different levels to hoarding. I think I myself didn't think I was a hoarder. However, when I moved house last year, I soon realized that actually, Tolu, you are a bit of a hoarder, because the amount of stuff that my husband was taking out of the shed with all these things that I said I'm one day going to use and never ever used was crazy. We threw away a skipload of stuff and donated to charity and gave to family and friends. Like, we got rid of so many things. And it was then I realized, okay, maybe I am a bit of a hoarder. And even just going through my old clothes and shoes and the amount of stuff that I'd acquired over the years that I was no longer using, but just holding on to for that one day that I may actually wear it. Who can relate to that? Because I know so many of us do the same thing. But hoarding is something that many of us do, but I think it can be a lot more costly when it comes to digital hoarding, which we're going to explore a little bit now. So digital hoarding is kind of similar to physical hoarding. So whereas physical hoarding, you're holding on to a lot of physical possessions and material things, digital hoarding, you're holding on to things digitally that no longer serve you, that you no longer need. If you are a digital hoarder and you're that person that has all these subscriptions that you're one day going to use and you're not sure if you want to get rid of it just yet, take a deep breath and really think about it. Am I going to use this thing within the next 3 to 6 months? Be really honest with yourself, brutally honest with yourself. And if the answer is no, then it is time to get rid of that subscription. I think this is probably the most challenging part of the process, is that letting go of a version of you, or letting go of something that once served you that no longer serves you, but you're not quite ready to admit that to yourself. But what I want you to do is kind of imagine your digital subscriptions as a cupboard in your house that is full of stuff that you need to go through and stuff that you probably haven't used in a long time. The reality is that cupboard will stay full and stay overflowing if you never open it and you never look inside. All that will happen is it will keep piling up. Every time you get something else that you don't need, you stuff it in that cupboard, and before you know it, that cupboard is overflowing. And I think the same thing can happen to your finances too. If you're not careful and you just have all of these subscriptions that you're paying out for constantly and you're not canceling any of them or reviewing any of them, over time it's going to pile up and it's going to eat into your finances. So rather than having a cupboard full, you're going to have a bank balance that is depleted for all these expenses that you don't need but you're currently still paying for. Okay, so what are we going to do to finally get on top of these subscriptions? I think the first step that we want to do is go through our last 3 months worth of bank statements. If you could go through a whole year's worth, that would even be better. But to start with, to not make the task too overwhelming or daunting, we want to at least start with 3 months worth of bank statements and go through them with a fine-tooth comb. Take your time with it. Give yourself an hour or so to really sit down and go through that statement and really identify all of the subscriptions that you are currently paying for, and write a list of those subscriptions. So write a list of the organization, write a list of the subscription, what you do with that subscription, and how much you're currently paying for that subscription. If you're only just checking your bank account, you actually might be missing out on some of those subscriptions that you're paying for unknowingly. You also want to log into your app store and check any subscriptions that you're paying for there too. Also go through your emails and check any of those subscriptions where they're reminding you that your free trial is coming to an end. You can also check PayPal or any other secondary payment method like that, so PayPal or ClearPay. Also, you want to check your old expired cards. Now, this is one that people don't often think about, but can impact you without you even realizing. That's because subscriptions actually do follow you a lot of times, even when your card has been replaced or your card has expired. A lot of people just assume that, oh, because the card has expired or because I'm no longer using that account, I'm no longer using that card, that the company can't take money from me anymore. However, I can categorically tell you that that is not the case, because I worked at an organization once, which I probably shouldn't be exposing online. However, I will not name any names, but I remember working for a company which was a subscription based organization. And actually what we were doing, or what the finance department were doing, were tweaking the numbers at the end of people's bank cards so that they could get the updated card version and still bill them. So people were still being billed on their new card without them giving us their new card details, and we were still able to take payment for the subscriptions. And I know that a lot of times these customers were unaware of this fact because they were not using the membership. Some of them had not signed into their account in years. It even got so bad that we had relatives of deceased members who contacted us saying, why are you taking money from my relative who has passed? And that's when those accounts got cancelled. But if they never spoke to us to cancel the subscription, that subscription just continued as long as we could get their card details. Don't ever think that, oh, I'm using a new card now, so everything is a new slate and a clean slate. It doesn't work like that. If you have a subscription that you have committed to, that company is going to try and get that money from you whichever way they can. Another way you can be paying for a subscription without realizing is if you have a joint account with a partner or spouse, you may be having those subscriptions on their account, not realizing that that subscription payment is still being paid, but out of a different account to the one that you use for the bulk of your subscriptions. Do you have any buy now, pay later accounts? Because if you do have buy now, pay later accounts, oftentimes they can hide the reoccurring charges and they don't often clearly show up as subscriptions. So you might not actually realize that it is a subscription that you're paying for with these buy now pay later companies. Also, when I mentioned earlier about looking at your last 3 months worth of bank statements, I also said to potentially look at the last 12 months. And the reason why I said that is because some subscriptions are annual subscriptions and not monthly subscriptions, or they could be quarterly or bi-yearly subscriptions. So things like your insurances for your home or your motor, for your car, those kind of subscriptions are something again that you want to look at and make sure you are getting the most bang for your buck, and make sure it is still giving you the best service for your money. Because if it's not, you want to go ahead and look for an alternative supplier and cancel that subscription. Children's devices can also be one of those subscriptions that you don't realize you're paying for. If your kids are anything like mine, sometimes they click to purchase things in the app without you realizing. And sometimes they're not just one-off purchases for games and apps. Sometimes they actually end up being subscriptions. So on a monthly basis, £2, £3, £5 is being deducted from your account for this subscription that you didn't even know your child had signed up for. Those little add-ons can quickly add up over time. So you definitely want to make sure you grab those machines and those devices and have a look at what you're actually paying for. Also, you can check your email aliases or old email accounts that you are no longer using. I have email accounts still open from when I was in university many moons ago, which actually have emails still coming through to them. Thankfully, there's none for any subscriptions because I've sorted that out many years ago. However, for some of you, you may actually still have subscriptions tied to those old email accounts and not realize again that payments are being taken from your account without you knowing. So you definitely want to log into that email account where you can and do that audit. Cloud storage and software is another one that you may be paying for not realizing, or you may realize that you're paying for it, but because it's a once a year type of subscription, you think, I'll get around to that when that time comes. That's something that I can relate to myself with my Google storage. So every year I basically have to increase my storage amount because I always get close to the maximum capacity of my storage. However, what I need to do is go through and declutter my inbox, my photos, my Google Drive, all of my Google store, my emails as well. All of my Google storage needs to be decluttered so that I can bring down the price the next time my Google Drive subscription is up for renewal. So that's an action that I definitely need to take away after this podcast episode and sort that out, because ultimately I'm paying for all this excessive storage, which yes, you could argue I'm using. However, I'm not actually getting the most out of it because I'm using it to store stuff that I don't need and I'm not actually using. So that's an action point that I'm definitely going to take away from this episode. And if you're like me, where you just keep every year having to pay more for storage. Maybe take a second and sit down and look at what you have stored and make sure you need all that stuff that you have stored. And if you don't, do that exercise between now and the next renewal date of getting rid of stuff so that you can reduce the price of that subscription the next time renewal comes around. So once you've gone through all of these different places where your subscriptions can be stored, you should now have quite a comprehensive list of subscriptions that you want to go through and streamline and get rid of some. Before you proceed with doing anything with that list that you've written down, I think it's really important to understand why you have all these subscriptions and why they stick around so much longer than when their purpose has gone. Because although I've spoken about the different ways that subscriptions are hidden from us, the truth and the reality is for a lot of us, we don't actually need help finding out where the money's going or where those subscriptions are. A lot of us know what subscriptions we currently have. So for many people, the issue isn't confusion. The issue is actually attachment, because most of the subscriptions that we get, they come into our lives at a particular season and for a particular reason. So for example, you may have subscribed to an online learning platform when your child was doing their 11 plus prep. That was something I did. You may have signed up for the gym at the start of the new year because you wanted to hit some fitness goals or some weight loss goals. You downloaded Duolingo because you wanted to learn a new language, but life got in the way and you were not able to do so. So for a lot of these subscriptions, the problem was that life just moved on. But as life moved on, the subscription didn't. And then there are the free trials, like the SEO example that I gave earlier. I learned the hard way there that free trials aren't really free trials. All they are is simply delayed decisions that you never come back to. Instead of saying yes to the long term, all you were simply doing is just saying, I'll make a decision about that later on. And then that later just quickly and quietly turns into monthly payments. As we've just started a brand new year, I think now's the perfect time to sit down and have a real honest conversation with ourselves. It served me last year, but does it serve me now? Will I ever return to the gym? In light of answering those questions, we can now sit down and make decisions about these subscriptions. For each subscription, you really want to sit down and ask yourself this important question. Would I sign up again for this today at today's current price? Because a lot of times these subscriptions go up incrementally without you even realizing. So yesterday's price is not today's price. So at today's price, for the service that I'm currently receiving, am I happy to sign up today and pay? If the answer is no, then you need to ask yourself, do I still want to continue with this subscription? Another way to help you filter through those subscriptions, the ones to keep and the ones to get rid of, is work out your cost per use of that subscription. So for example, if you're paying £20 a month for gym membership and you only go to the gym once a month, essentially you are paying £20 every single time you go to the gym. However, if you are paying £20 a month for the gym membership, but you're going once a week, then you're essentially paying £5 every time you visit the gym. So that's a bit of a better cost per usage. So then that can help you decide whether or not to keep that subscription. I think this is where people really get stuck. It's with FOMO, and that is the fear of missing out, the fear of the unknown, the fear of if I cancel the subscription today, what if I need it tomorrow? What if I can't get that deal again? The fear of I might need it later, and the fear of canceling something that just feels so familiar to you. But the reality is that FOMO is very expensive, especially when it's a monthly charge. And one thing to consider is the fact that you can restart your subscription at any time after cancelling it. A lot of subscriptions, you cancel it today. If you go on there tomorrow, you can renew without no issue. And just to throw this tip in there, actually, if you want to save on your subscriptions but not cancel, what you can do is begin the cancellation process on the company's website. And oftentimes what they do is they offer you a discounted rate in order to keep you as a customer. So for example, the subscription fee might be £20 a month, but when you start the cancellation process, they try and get you to stay. So they're like, are you sure you want to cancel? Here's 50% off if you stay for another month. And so then you get that same subscription at a discounted price just because you initiated that cancellation process. It doesn't work with every single vendor, but it's worth a try. You never know how much money you could save on your subscription just by doing this. So if you've made it this far in episode and I've not yet convinced you to review your subscriptions and cancel the ones that you're not using, hopefully the numbers might make you think twice. £30 a month subscription that you're not using is £360 a year. £50 a month that you're not using, that is £600 a year. And £100 a month on subscriptions that you are not using is a whole £1,200 in a year that you could be saving. And you can be putting that money towards your other financial goals. And let's not even begin to talk about what you could do with that money if you had invested it in the stock market. And the beauty of this is that this money is not coming from you doing any additional work or you getting a side hustle or you getting a part-time job. It's coming from you literally plugging those silent leaks. So you've made it to this part of the process and you've cancelled all of those unused subscriptions and you're feeling like, yes, I've got more money in my account. But hold on a second, don't go spending that money just yet. Once you've cancelled all those unused subscriptions, you really want to start giving that money a job to do immediately, because this is a big mistake that people often make. They cancel those subscriptions, and then that money that they've saved from those cancellations suddenly just disappears to other spending. You want to make sure that you give that money a job to do immediately, whether it's to save the money, whether it's to pay off debt, whether it's to create a sinking fund, whether it's to go towards your emergency fund. When you give that money a job to do, it stops that money from slipping through your fingers. Then you can actually see the real benefit of that subscription audit that you've done. And there's something surprising that happens when you complete this exercise and do this digital declutter of your subscriptions. You feel a lot lighter, you have a lot less decisions to make, you have a lot less noise and a lot less mental clutter. Now, this subscription audit is something that I want you to come back to every 6 to 9 months. So it's not something you do once and forget about it and never do it again, because the reality is you're going to sign up to other subscriptions as the year progresses. We really want to make sure that incrementally throughout the year, we are reviewing those subscriptions and making sure they're still in alignment with us. So set yourself that quarterly reminder to review your subscriptions. Ask yourself again, do I still need this? Am I still using it? Does this still align with the goals that I'm pursuing? So if you've been in that position where you've been sitting down reflecting over your finances and you're thinking, where is all my money going and what is going on? Why is my money not going further the way I expect it to? This might be the thing that you've needed to do for a while. So hopefully you found this episode very useful, and hopefully you are going to do this subscription audit that we've spoken about. If you found this episode helpful, definitely give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the podcast, and share it with a friend or family member that can benefit from this subscriptions audit help. And if you want to continue listening to more practical, judgment-free conversations about money and personal finances, make sure you are subscribed to Not Another Money podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in into today's episode, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.